All right, Chris. So, do you want a targeted? Would you like a differentiated curriculum? Here's my theory. Are you also from? Yep. All right. There you go. Learning futures. That's the theory chunk, and I'll send you to a video if you can.
Oh, I love the theory.
That's what no one ever says.
I mentioned Mayer's multimedia learning theory yesterday in my presentation, and I mentioned the words cognitive.
Yeah, good. The one I was talking about was Carmichael Reed and Karpicki down the bottom.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's why, yeah.
He's he's a small person, redhead from Ireland, I think. He's the cutting edge of this sort of stuff, I think.
And that's the instructor presence in the video?
Yeah, and he also talks about video length. Like, he's basically made a guide for higher ed video production. So pretty much your whole area is his area. So that's who I'd chase up if I was.
Espen needs to know about that.
Espen? Who's that? Is that a...
He's the person that did our Create Your Own Studio visits.
Oh, the DIY or whatever they're called. All right, should we go through this or not?
Sure. Yeah.
Might as well. Feel free to stop me at any time, obviously, because it's just us. But basically, the background, those are the jobs I do at my school. The background on this is I did a diploma of teaching ASD students last year with a scholarship from our department down in Victoria, and whilst also doing all this flipped learning stuff, and it started to coalesce what I was doing and make a lot of sense in the sort of disability and inclusion space. So that's how we come to be here. So the structure, which we will get through a lot quicker than I thought: why, what, prior knowledge, core principles, how, and then there's a couple of just things that you can use tomorrow with your students. Maybe can I ask you, do you have particular students in mind that you're thinking of, or a particular cohort, or a particular group?
In differentiation?
Yeah, inclusion, differentiation, whatever you want to call it.
All.
Good.
Oh, no, seriously, I'm probably one of the poorest schools in Australia. Do you know what I mean? And so they come along not really wanting to learn.
Yeah.
And so, and at all different, we have, I'm at high school, but we have many students who can't read.
Yeah.
We have a lot of...
Sorry? Where are you?
Playford International College in South Australia. I know it doesn't sound like it would be the poorest school, very clever rebranding, but scratch under the surface. So, and we have a lot of EALD students. We have a high Aboriginal population as well. So we've got a really big, cross-section of kids. Holden was the main employer in the area. Of course, that's closed down now, just recently. So, yeah, there are lots of things. So the variety is just really vast, and so we just have to differentiate for every kid for all sorts of reasons.
Right. Okay. Well, we're going to be friends then. Basically, so in my job, it's called Literacy Improvement Teacher, but I'm working with staff and students to work on three big groups: the low literacy students, the EL students, and the students with a disability. So those are my three areas. That's pretty much word for word what you just said. Anyway, let's crack through it. Why? Because it's the law under the DDA, the DSE, and the CRPD, which you don't need to know, but they say that we have to make a reasonable adjustment for our students, as you would know. There is an aspect of unjustifiable hardship, but I haven't heard that pursued in law from any of the people I speak to, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. But essentially, you have to do everything in your power to adjust to the students that you've got. Yeah. And why? Because 38% of people with a disability of working age actually complete Year 12, as opposed to 61% for the non-disabled community, and 45% of people with a disability live near or in poverty. So that's, to me, pretty serious. This is a bit of a summary of all the different types of disability. For me, as in a high school, we're only going to focus on cognitive, hearing and visual. Mobility and neural are harder to solve, but they're sort of structural things rather than teacher adjustments that can be made. So let's talk about these things, shall we? So if you have a student who has visual difficulties, the strategies you're looking at are podcasting, audio feedback, hello, audio casting, direct class instruction, which is helpful, or basically minimise visual cues or provide examples, alternatives rather, and also Vision Australia has a audio library that you can use if you're teaching text or textbooks or anything like that. You basically tell them, I have a student who is hard of seeing, has visual disability, whatever you want to call it, and they will basically transcribe videos for you, they will subtitle videos, caption videos, they'll do all sorts of things, and that's kind of their remit from the government. So that's something that you would look into. In terms of hearing, it's tricky, Braille, but it takes a long time to get it's transcribed into Braille, classroom amplification technology, so that's sort of what I'm wearing around my neck, or a little speaker system on a belt clip. Sound field is what's pictured above there, so you would have your actual space altered, and again, most governments would fund those sort of things. Lots of classroom management is the hard one, because if they're hard of hearing, the main thing you need is the students to be quieter, so that's the harder part. And you give them notes before class, and some schools have a Auslan interpreter. If you want to take a picture of that little QR code, that's a video of a guy playing Mortal Kombat without being able to see, that I thought was especially interesting if you think of inclusion. So he basically plays the game entirely off audio cues rather than visual cues. Yeah, well.
Why do iPhone make initial camera and read QR codes? It's so handy.
That's good, isn't it? When I first learned that you didn't need a QR reader anymore, I was like, oh great, now I can use them.
I'm so
Because it used to be everyone would be going, I don't have a QR reader, and then now you can just say, well, don't worry.
So I just use your iPhone and it opens it up. It's so good.
Yeah. All right. Any questions at this point? Visual, hearing. Does anyone have students with those particular issues?
Yes.
Yes. Good. Are you doing any of these?
Well,
have you heard of any of these?
I reckon we have, I'm not sure whether it's CIRU, like a unit, or whether it was the department. So I know that some people have got, some large text versions of like Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, great.
That was the class novel. I know that we did that one time. Just interested in these sound field systems, because I've got a couple of students, I realised just recently, who have hearing difficulties.
Yeah.
And so, I just wonder about that stuff. I don't think we know anything about that stuff.
So if I was you, I'd be looking into your whatever government you have. Where are you?
South Australia.
I'd be looking into, they should have a disability fund, because that's comes out of a separate fund, and the sort of stuff we'll talk about next, which is free or cheap. That's sort of like a structural building, so it'd be federal funding you'd be looking at, but that would be something I would be looking to do. Down the back, who are you?
Rhodes. I'm from Sydney. I look after professional development for teachers in we've got teachers all across the globe at Australia.
Oh, you're the
Global.
Global School. Yep. Okay. Cool. And then, so what we're talking about mostly is inclusion and differentiation for students. Is that okay with you? Okay. Some of this may or may not apply. So when you come to cognitive, that's where it gets super complicated, I feel. You're either talking about your neurotypicals or your neurodiverse. And under that, there's a whole bunch of different categories that I'm going to see if you know what they are, which will be exciting. So if you look at your little sheet that you have in front of you, in the bottom right, there's a little box that has the numbers 1 through 8, and then number 9 is physical. And if you have a pen, you're going to try and tell me what disabilities they are. So it depends on how confident you feel. I can give you the first letter or like a bit of support, but write down what disabilities you think there are that might go in there. Let's jump straight ahead. Okay, here is the cheat sheet. So one starts with D. There's one that ends in ADHD. Wonder what that one is. One that ends in ASD. Wonder what that is. The rest is up to you. Have a go and see if you know what they are. So pencil in those letters,
So you just
and then try and
all the disabilities listed there.
Yeah. So the first one starts with D. You probably know that one. Thank you. Good. And then once you get to 4 to 8, that might be a little bit more difficult, and we'll see how we go. This is the sort of thing that I would do with my staff if you were trying to develop their inclusive practices. And then that's an interesting discussion when they either do or don't know what these things are. Because it's sort of like, how could you differentiate for students if you don't actually know what their things are called, let alone what they do? But I'll stop talking to give you a moment to think. All good? Okay.
To 9 here.
Yep, so all I want you to do is pencil in those letters that I've got there.
Based on, there's no other information, just that.
Just that. That's all you got. And that's the challenge. Pre-assessment, that's right. So the first one is, what would you say the one starting with D is?
Right.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, how are we doing? Yeah, good. Yeah. Now I'm looking at it myself thinking, I don't remember what they are. It's been a while in between.
You've got another one. I've just got the one, I think. But I'll go.
I'll help you out. 8 is like very broad. Or difficulties, but yes, agree, yep. Okay.
Intellectual disorder, difficulty.
Yep, good. 6, probably disability. What's the R and the L? Actually, Chris, here we go. Number 5 has to do with cognitive load theory. Does that give you a hint?
Oh,
So the M's memory.
yeah.
So what kind of memories are there?
Short term.
There you go. Short term, auditory. Yeah, okay, good. Just yell out when you think it's time to ruin the surprise. We ready? So which one are we stuck on? 6.
RLD.
RLD. I'm thinking the R is probably a type of language. So if you think of a little kid, there's 2 types of language, in and out. What do we call that?
Receptive.
Yeah, I think. Let's check. Shall we check?
Sure.
All right, let's see. All right, dyslexia. Did we all get a tick? Beautiful. ADHD, that's easy. ASD, also easy because we had it there. Auditory processing, short-term auditory memory, receptive language disorder, intellectual disability, learning difficulties, and physical. So to me, that's especially challenging because that's the sort of things that our students are presenting with, and they're all neurodiverse, which means that their brains are operating differently to ours. So you can't look at a student with ASD and just understanding implicitly what they're doing or what they're not doing. You need to sort of know what all these things are and how they work. So, hence, that's the sort of thing I'll be speaking to my staff about. And then at least it's at the forefront of their mind when a teacher says, that's an ID kid, they can actually know what that is for starters and build from there.
So what was the category? Neuron, the overall category for that?
We call it neurotypical or neurodiverse. So the most complicated ones are neurodiverse because their brain is either structured or functioning differently to ours. Yep. Beautiful. Core principles are, if at the moment you walk down the hall to Steve Crapnell's session, his would be about Microsoft learning, I can't remember what they're called.
Yeah, learning tools.
Or maybe it's not learning.
Assistive.
Yeah, assistive reader, those sort of things.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, immersive.
Yeah, immersive reader. Yeah, thank you. So what we're not doing are those things. So I could just tell you open Microsoft, there's one of those in there. There's one in Google, there's one in Apple. But the difficulty is if you're relying on their systems, which aren't perfect, and you have a disability, we as neurotypical people, we can fill in the blanks. So if a YouTube clip autos captions, we go, that's funny, but we understand what they're saying because we can hear. But if we don't have our hearing sense at all, those sort of things become a much bigger issue than just ha 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 funny. If you were choosing between those 3 things, you'd basically just look at who is using them more, how many active users, and how much data do they collect. So that's very difficult to find out, but those would be the things you'd check. What we're talking about here are things that are adaptive, so they actually adapt to the child. They're not just factory data driven, they actually respond to the students themselves. So take a second to look at that, tell me what you want to look at, and then we'll look at the thing that you decide. Maybe Chris, because I know you have to go, your first pick. What do you want to...
I was really just taking it in because I really like record your iPhone screen because I actually used that in my presentation. I didn't actually use it, but I talked about it. I showed a video on how I did it or something. Anyway, what about teacher productivity?
Oh, that's my favourite, and actually that's a very good choice for you especially. So we'll go to teacher productivity. Have you ever had your iPhone read things to you?
You mean Siri?
This is really interesting because I think in some ways a little bit of I don't want to say it's a generational thing, but I do notice with using Siri, voice to text and all of those sort of tools.
Yeah.
It seems to be young people coming through, it seems a little bit more natural. And I'm aware of these things, but I tend not to do it. I still go back to my other habits.
Yeah.
I use Siri on my phone when my phone's plugged into my car because when someone sends me a text, I can go, read, it says, do you want to read it? You ask it or something. I click on the button, but then it reads it, and then I can reply, and then I say send.
Okay.
So I do use it, but I'm the person that says, are you serious, and uses the word serious all the time. And my phone turns on. And my phone, was it your phone that turned on? It turned on someone's at work one day.
Yeah.
Siri replied, and it said, how can I help you? And I'm like, seriously, I turn on other people's phones. So I don't really like Siri personally.
Well, suffice to say, we'll skip that one because it sounds like we're across it. The next one is where it gets good. So this is for many years, for the last 11 months, I've been running an educational research reading group. And so I have to read a lot of articles and we discuss them each month. I was using a function on your iPhone to read it aloud. And so it says, cognitive load theory, and it does it robot, blah, 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 blah. So then I showed that to one of my dyslexic students, and I was like, this is great, I'm using it. It's hilarious. It helps me, I can be driving the car and reading an academic article, which is what I want to do, believe it or not. But I showed it to one of my students who had dyslexia, and she just said, this is terrible. This doesn't cover what I want it to cover. So since I did some research, and this is where it costs money.
I'm going to read your documents to you.
Oh, that's me talking about the video. I'll show you a short video. This is Claro Read. So this is me looking up an academic article on my phone. We're looking at andragogy because why not? Everyone loves a bit of that.
Sorry, just say this Claro Read.
Claro Read.
2014, 5.
So this is what it sounds like. I'll let you see what you
Published
think.
online June 2014 in C-Race. http://www.cert.org/journal/CEHTTP.
So I've already gotten tired when I'm in the car driving, and I'm charging this car in front of me because I remember with all those dots and slashes.
Yeah.
And now I've turned it off and gone to this, going to use my phone illegally.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Yeah. Well, this is the best in the business, but what you described, so what it just read out, that I left that in on purpose. So it's reading out this bit, which is the opposite of universal design for learning. So they've designed this. They say, we can all read. It's a piece of paper. We skip that, right? But this technology, if you're dyslexic, it's doing that. And you're wasting this much more of your life. And often it does the bottom as well. So the bottom says, this is a paper for L, and here's our postal address. So if you're dyslexic or deaf or hard of hearing, you're hearing all of that and just thinking, this isn't designed for me. Yeah.
That's why I was really interested in terms of showing us that. And I know you were trying to be platform agnostic, but just looking at knowing things that in Windows and Microsoft they can, the immersive reader can cut out all of that advertising side material, can cut and paste the text into Word, so you can select the text you want so you don't have all that peripheral information, and then have it read to you.
That's true. The difference that you're looking at with this is that you can teach it to do that based on...
AI will teach it? Or?
Not AI, you personally. So Microsoft is collecting a lot of data. This is how people read, this is what they say, all that sort of thing, the series of the world. That's improving by a machine.
Yeah.
This software improves for the student. So they'll have their own profile. One aspect of it is like speaking. So if you have a speech impediment, it'll learn the way you speak. If we have Aussie accents, it'll learn that accent and it'll cater to that student. Whereas Microsoft you're basically relying on enough Australians using it, or enough Australians with a speech impediment or whatever it is, a lisp, until eventually it'll catch up.
And
It's called Claro Read. You can get it on your iPhone as a sort of cheaper version.
it's now $40, $39.99 for the bundle, and it's $15 per
Yeah.
of the 3 bundle. So which one's the best app, or do you use all 3?
We have the full program for our students on their computers,
Whoa.
which is $300. This one's a watered down version, just so you I personally use it to do this work.
Do you use all 3, or do you just use the PDF?
I just use the reader because I can type and write and speak
So
relatively naturally.
Claro PDF Pro.
Yeah, so like if you were looking to use this, that's the only one I'd get, Claro Read, so you can read your things.
That's what I'm asking.
No,
I'm liking this for the car, as long as I don't get all that top and the bottom stuff. I
Yeah.
really like it.
even like I've been marking students' work while I'm driving my car, so like their Word documents are being read out, their OneNotes are being read out. You stop at the lights, you take a note,
I hope you're not. I was
blah,
going to say,
blah,
you
blah,
can't do it in text comments. Oh my God.
Have you heard that
I'm not
multitasking
commenting.
is not
Have
effective?
you heard it's like completely illegal? And we have signs now in Queensland that says using your phone, and this would be the same, is like driving while you're drunk. It's
That's
the
true.
same.
But this is just listening.
And highly
Until you stop and you do some scribbling.
Well, I'm giving you bad advice. That's not what I would
It's
do,
illegal
because that's
advice.
illegal and we never do illegal
We would
things.
never do that.
But you could, like, for me, like as an English teacher, that the students write long stories and you sort of think, oh, gee, 4,000 words in year 8. Let's see how that goes. This sort of cuts that down. You feel like you're getting two painful things done at once. You're in traffic, you're also listening to this story. You get out at the end. I didn't say marking was bad, did I? Or
We love that.
no, not painful. What I mean is it's joyous and enriches my drive. But you put those two joyful things together, Brisbane traffic.
There used to be a sport called extreme ironing where people would jump out of aeroplanes and iron and like that.
Yeah,
This is extreme people.
extreme teaching. All right, so your name is, sir?
Michael,
Pick one, Michael. What do you want to do? I reckon, since you're uni, we should talk live captioning, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah?
yeah.
Is that something that you're actively doing? Sorry, I just picked for you. You choose.
No, Mike, it's kind of like
Okay.
I wasn't sure where I was going until
There was guidance.
Until I was guiding you. All right. Since there's few of us, do you want to try this out? Does anyone not have an iPhone to hand?
I don't have an iPhone.
Would you like me to give you one?
Sure.
All right. So what we'll be trying out is Clips. So this is an Apple product. It's going to do live automatic captioning for us. I'm hoping we have internet and that it works. But you'll notice, and obviously the focus of this little talk is inclusion. This is similar to the products I just told you about, in the sense that if you speak normally, it won't get it. You have to speak very succinctly and enunciate quite clearly. Do I have it still? So take a moment, see if you can find it. It's actually quite hard to find on the App Store. You might need to take a photo of it because it's already an Apple product. It's easy to find.
Oh, I must already have the application.
Yeah, quite likely.
I searched it.
And then what we'll do is we'll weirdly talk into our phones and try and explain some concept, and straight away it should give you pretty good feedback on just how far behind the technology is, because it's not as good as you might think.
So what sort of really weird concept are we explaining now?
Whatever you like. I would speak normally
Yeah?
with as thick an Australian accent as you can, and use words that you think are quite complicated, and see how it goes. We're trying to test the software, challenge it to do its job.
Okay.
So what you need to do is you just, once you're in there, one of the options down the bottom is live.
I haven't got there yet.
Oh, okay.
So using lots of complicated
You're looking at the
words
QR
to
code.
explain something weird.
Oh, wait, you got to set on the captioning setting.
Do I just start?
What?
Yep, just whenever you're ready, give it a go. What did I do? So Photo, video. We're looking for like settings. I can't really read upside down very well. But
I don't really have it. Is it one of these? Oh, no.
oh yeah, there you go. All right. I think we're looking here. Hello?
Whoa.
All right, so these are the live captioning options as we go.
We're the theory
I'm going to hold
class.
it while I'm doing it.
So we're going to make
Yeah,
the
you have to
cartoon
hold it.
just out
I
of
already did it. I
interest.
thought I was
Me
recording
too.
too.
All right, so try it now. So as you speak, it will.
Oh,
say
as you
yours.
speak, it will big. It will automatically speak. It will big. It will. Oh. So, and we're using complicated words to do this. Stopped.
All right, and then watch the video, and then that should, in my opinion, that should show you pretty clearly how poor the software is at picking up your natural language. You can, if you spoke, like for example, if I said, let's see if it works. Today, we are talking about. So that would work perfectly because I was very...
talking your strongest Australian accent with big complicated words?
Not at all. So today,
Look at that.
talking about. So that's perfect, right? But what I want you to try is speak as naturally, as quickly as a lecturer, as you normally do.
As quickly as I normally do, because now it's just going to
Okay,
work.
so I held that and
Yep.
did it, but nothing came out.
So that's your video down there.
As
it
naturally
did.
and as quickly as possible, because now it's going to work. Why doesn't it just play back?
Why did it stop?
I don't
Oh,
know.
there's multiple videos now. Let's play this one.
All right, now this time try and, because we're at Flip RESCON, try and think of a small maths concept and try and teach it.
Okay.
So that was you. It was doing pretty good, actually. I was
I
surprised
thought it
at
was
that.
too, and I spoke fast, but I heard you saying slowly, and I thought, well, I went faster than that.
Yeah, so try and do three. One natural, one normal, one showing off like you did, then one normal, and then try and do one where you enunciate like you're in finishing school, and sort of, today we are talking, and see the difference that you can find.
Okay.
Would be the...
Those videos, as part of their package, they will actually caption it.
I'm having trouble getting me out.
Show me to have a go.
Dress now. Yeah, thanks.
And part of the package is they have like humans on the other side who will caption it. And that's, so actually the way they do captioning in these companies, we've actually captioned some of our videos in our courses. And we pay $1.
I know I'm happy up today to stop rating system on an Apple. I've got a pretty old phone.
Ah, okay.
And I've got
I
my
love
scan
videos.
tool.
But the way they
Oh no, it just worked.
put it through some kind of speech recognition program, and then the human corrects the errors. And so with ILO's videos, it's a subscription service. It's going to be like a, I don't know if you've seen the ClickView thing. It's going to be kind of like a ClickView for universities, I guess. Is probably a way to think of it. And
It's there. You might have it or you might not.
built into the university.
I'm not sure what happened, so I did another one,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just the same one coming up, like it's not a new one. Did I have to do something for new? So I did that, I held it, and I did one about fractions.
Right.
Four of these
Did you hold that down? Was it right?
popular at universities.
Oh, it might just be adding it onto the other one.
One is called Canopy.
Oh,
And
okay.
ILO's videos, and I think there's one other that's disabled. Those are the
Yeah, so it's just adding it onto a new one. So we're just going to basically
Microsoft Stream does captioning.
try and get rid of this one, bin this one.
It's better than what you get off like YouTube.
Okay, YouTube is not for that, because some of my videos are.
He's testing to see.
And so,
I could
and
bin
we're
it.
just
Great,
going to
yeah,
use
let's do that,
Blackboard,
try it.
and we're getting Blackboard Hello, which
I've heard this is an interesting tool.
is fantastic. So I just think it's really impressed and it's really, really good. And now we've run courses where and where documents have headings, like we put them in and we make sure the videos all have, we make sure they've all got transcripts
Yeah.
with headings.
So Streams does this.
Stream does the captioning currently, so
What does
And the
Microsoft
Ally
Stream?
thing is,
currently it's meant to be.
I've heard that's it's an intriguing tool, Blackboard.
Yeah, but it seems to work, and they're literally trying to just do the LTI integration now, and I will be putting my course through it to see how bad it is.
Operating systems
How it
too
stands
old.
up.
But in our context, it's okay. We've got
Yeah,
Canopy,
that
which
technology
does
only
make
get better,
it. automatic.
And it's got to do
automatic
with
captions
accents and
in
obviously
videos.
all that stuff.
It's not brilliant, but it's not brilliant.
Do you have students who are relying on it there?
I don't
Or is
know
it
the
just an
figures.
addition?
I don't know the figures. We would have a small percentage, and I
Yeah.
think those teachers, they would go into the transcript and probably edit it as they needed it.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, we
Let's,
didn't go in and edit it.
right, I'll move on to the next one then, which will be relevant to your context, I think. If it'll work
So
for
the
me.
next one, the one you're choosing, the one you're choosing, the
Yep.
next one.
What's the next one?
The next one that you're choosing, you stop giving us choice.
No, well, because there's 4 of you, and I know where you're from and what
You
you.
see, your next one is your choice.
Yeah,
See, no,
definitely. All right, so this is specifically for your 3 contexts. So keep doing high schooly things. So this is. Have you heard of WCAG 2.0? Okay, so by law, a lot of big institutions that I know the 2 of you are from are being widely sued as a result of not following these principles. So I'll take you through them. I have another version of this presentation that kind of has all the juicy stuff, like the people that got sued for billions of dollars for the poor layout of their website. Universities have taken big hits on this sort of stuff as well. So these are the principles. The 4 things are perceivable, operable, robust, and understandable. This is sort of comes to us from mostly from special ed, so you may not have heard of it. I hadn't until I did the degree. So the first is perceivable. So this is gold standard. This is dyslexia training by La Trobe University, and obviously they're practicing what they preach. So this was, obviously you've got the interactive element here. She's using Poll Everywhere, which John does as well, or did in the past.
I've turned a Mentimeter, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, same. And what's happening there is that there's another person live captioning as she speaks. So it has to be someone as trained as she is. She's a doctor in dyslexia or language disorders. And so she would have something like probably her research assistant or similar, tapping away live captions. So that's quite a niche skill set. It's like Auslan for singers almost. Yeah.
So we heard of one of the universities in New South Wales were getting their first year sort of graduates and stuff to do the transcribing students and earn a bit of money.
Yeah. It's good. You might do that. So the only tricky part is you need text alternatives for non-text content. So you would need, what do they call it, alternative text. I know Microsoft does it automatically, but in the old days, if you were adding an image to a website, you would have to type in the code, this is a picture of an elephant. Now Microsoft does it really well. I heard recently at PD he had a photo and the alternative text was like, this is an Indian elephant. And he didn't even know that he wouldn't have never made that distinction, but the computer did. He's just chucked an elephant in there. And it didn't actually make sense for his presentation because it was from the wrong country and whatever. But obviously that's an interesting sort of point. It needs to be time-based, so especially if it's live, if you guys are live streaming lectures, I think if someone were to sue you, you'd probably need to pay a lot of other people to do that. You need a simple layout, which is when we had the academic article being read out. That's exactly what you're talking about. I find that quite regularly. It'll read out even things like the ABC website. You open that up, you get your screen reader to read it out. It'll say news, home, articles, more articles. You get to the bottom, all those ads that come up at the bottom of blogs. Fix your skin, become young. All those things will be read out. And so the hard of hearing or deaf person is just sitting there going, these ads are like always the same. No fancy background. So you look at that presentation, you're thinking, well, that's not very slick. She hasn't tried very hard, but that's obviously a very conscious effort to do that. Operable, so this is a non-example or a bad example. You need everything to be able to be keyboard accessible. So a lot of this, if you imagine your text reader reading all of that out, you'd be, if you were hard of hearing or deaf, you'd just be tearing your hair out. We won't go into much more detail than that, but you can see how that would work. Especially if you've ever had to try and tab through a website when your mouse breaks or something. If your website is well designed, that should be possible. You're just going through all the elements. If you look at a website like that, all the hyperlinks, all the complexity would be awful. And then understandable. I think this is a video, so I'll try and get it happening. But you need to make all of it clear and understandable. It is. So these are obviously a real website, and you can see all the pop-ups and all the garbage that is. It's kind of like websites have become increasingly eye candy, and if you're a person that's hard of hearing, you're getting all of this garbage read out and explained to you and so on. Yeah? So those are the 4 principles. It should be robust is the last one. I don't have a picture. Wonder why that is. Maximize compatibility with current and future, because it's the boring one. It's hard to explain with an example. But all of the assistive technologies, you need your system to basically match up and respond to those, as we know. All right, so now, down the back, I've forgotten your name already, but it's now your pick, and I promise I won't take it from you. Let's see. Why is it not working for me?
Is there an equivalent, like you said, there's an iPhone reader, is there an equivalent for Android, Microsoft?
Same program, same everything. Clara Read is what I'd use.
Oh, no, that one that we were using before, the...
Oh, Clips. No. Not that I know of. There might be, but I'm not familiar with that. I don't think, if I had a disabled child or student, I probably wouldn't be using Android. Would be my tip, but...
Not that he's a real Mac person, but
yeah.
he's saying that.
No, well, if you wanted, got my Google accreditation, my Microsoft, and my Apple. So I'm just telling you what I think is the best. It's not like I'm, they're all sending me free stuff. All right, what would you like to look at? Oh, good. And I'm glad you haven't, because you'll see. All right, so I'll play this little video for you to give you an idea. I might turn off the sound because it's annoying. So this is a Sipan Reader that reads aloud physical text, so Bibles, books, novels, textbooks. This is what it looks like. You basically drag it along the text, and it's doing its own processing of the text. So I think the video is turning it into an article for us. So it's copying a whole book or a whole page of a book into Word, and then we're getting it to be read aloud from there. But if I purposely didn't bring one because I don't think they're very good, and I'll show you an example why. So I don't know if anyone knows the book Wexler, The Writing Revolution. It's all about how to teach writing well. There's a section from our book. So you can see from the start, oh yeah, okay, we're going okay, positives, all good. If you look down here, next you can have your students fill in blanks with their own types in sentences that you create. Again, it's best to embed this content students have when studying in order to boost learning in time that you're developing S.
I see.
So people are buying these. A lot of people are buying these and thinking that they work. They do to an extent, but only in the extent that a person with a reading disability is further disabled by using this device as opposed to another person. So.
And it's obviously, I'm just wondering in a digital age, how much need is there to actually try and transcribe things from hard copies of books onto a...
Yeah, so if you were practicing what we call universal design for learning, if you were practicing that well and following WCAG that we just went through, none of this should be necessary. So it's sort of like, which would you rather change, the habits of the teachers in your school or try and overcome their old-fashioned book, text, paper ways by using this tool? I think, to me, the option is pretty clear what I would prefer.
Yeah, and you pointed out right down the end, but even on the second line, do students' example of sent up them and have them underline positives?
Yeah.
I would have been lost at sent up them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know?
So we can sort of...
It should be sentences containing them.
Yeah, it's almost like that sort of meme that circulates with the letters of the words mixed around, and we as readers can go, yep, okay, I've been reading for my whole life, I can fix it. If you have dyslexia, you can't, and that's what normal language appears to you as. So there might be some scope for using it with EAL learners as a better dictionary or an alternative to a paper dictionary, because you can use a dictionary setting, so you just look up a word and it'll define it. It does, I think it has 4 or 5 languages, so you can, if you had language, like direct language learning from French to English, you could use it in a bitsy way, but not in a holus bolus way. And then, now it's your choice. If I can get this to work, this link is...
Thank you.
I overdid it. No worries, thank you. And then we might just chat it out from there, but what's left? Which one have I down? What would you like to look at?
Just for a joke.
Yes.
Just for a joke, I was going to say
Let's do it.
end of presentation. But
Hey, I'm happy to do that if you want to just have a conversation.
No. Oh, no, but that's pretty golly. Website accessibility.
We did that one. That was the WCAG, wasn't it?
Oh, so well, I thought you said like to those, but you said for you people here this is relevant because
Yes.
you're at university.
Yeah. Well, are you writing websites?
No.
So it doesn't
Oh, okay,
apply.
it's for writing them. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, all of my students, regardless of when they're SWG, have
Yeah.
trouble accessing.
Well, I mean, you as a teacher might having seen that, or maybe you weren't watching, which is fair enough. Knowing those principles, you might be a bit more careful around what websites you choose to put in front of your students, if that makes sense.
And like you were saying, select the bits and then put it somewhere so that it doesn't have those other bits in it.
Yep.
And even
Okay,
teach
cool.
your students to do it.
Yes.
Mm.
I think that's the thing, you know.
Yes, get them to know what are the important bits.
All of this is such a distraction. Take out what's the relevant text, put it somewhere else, and then do something with it.
Whew.
In the same way we teach them like how to research well, you might teach them how to find information that's well presented as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, there's a choice there between ASD awareness and
Yep.
assistive technologies. What's your favourite?
Well, let's just do them both, and then live cap. I don't think we've missed one. All right, so if you want to learn about ASD, I made a course. It takes about 40 minutes to complete. It's pretty much a summary of my 2-year degree in 40 minutes, but it's targeted at high school teachers, so that may or may not apply to you, but I've had a number of teachers in my school go through it and they found it useful. It's kind of, I think it's useful.
So I can do the course?
Yeah, it's free. You can share it. You could use it with your staff, like I've done at my school.
Oh, good.
All those sort of things. It's
I
got.
would have you told me that rather than me just doing it and saying, oh, sorry, no, I always accredit it.
Oh no, it's like.
Can I ask, the people before saying, oh, now it's really good now, you don't have to worry about, having a Q code reader.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. Like sometimes it'll come up saying, I know that it wants me to put the code there, but other times I have to, like I try, find a Q code reader or something. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not always.
Yeah.
So.
Agreed.
Okay. Thanks.
It's not just you, is the short answer.
Okay, so I've taken a picture of all of that so I can either use the
Or
or
just, okay,
the Q code.
great, beautiful.
Oh, okay, so it's not just me, like I should just be able to aim my phone at that and my phone says, oh, you want to read that QR code?
Yeah, you should. Like if you zoomed in, it would work.
Oh, okay.
Like if you zoom in on this section, it should theoretically work.
Flick into, may I? Do you mind?
Yeah, of course.
Not that I don't believe you, I just want to... So it should just
So
do something.
you're trying to get it to focus. Obviously me standing in the way isn't helping. No success?
No, it's not trying anything.
Yeah. That's true. All right, let's see what's left and then we'll just have a conversation. Oh yeah, assistive technology. So at our school, these are the only 2 things we use because they're the best, and that's what Spelled Victoria, which is the learning disabilities, difficulties, not sure what D they go with. These are the 2 things they suggest. So for productive, Dragon speaking naturally, and for receptive, Claro Read. So if you download the app, you'll get a little taste of how effective it is, the Claro Read software. Dragon Speak is a difficulty, but probably not if you're online, because what we find as a mainstream school is if everyone's typing and you've got a student with dyslexia, say, they basically have a call centre microphone system, and so you then have to sort of kind of find them a spot where they can be not as openly observed by their classmates, because obviously as teenagers they don't want to be seen as I'm the weird one with the thing. Yeah, exactly, that's what I'm thinking. So you could, if and when, or if you already have students with that sort of an issue, then you could get them to invest in it or invest in it yourself, maybe. And just, yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
No. The only reason it's especially good is because it'll learn as you go. So it has a whole bunch of options, like you get it to read all of your Word documents on your computer, so it starts to understand these are the sort of things, these are the words that we use, these are what they mean, this is what sort of sentences they exist within. So like, say me, if I'm writing a lot of articles about inclusion or flipped learning or those sort of things, it'll start to pick up the word flipped learning as sort of a proper noun that always goes together and those sort of things. And for students, it'll be learning their subject-specific vocabulary. So it's not just like sounding out the word archaeology, it's going, yep, when this person makes this sound, which might be different to the word archaeology, that's what they mean, kind of thing. You had a question?
Well, a lot of years ago, when I first started teaching, I ended up in special ed, and Dragon Reed was there. I'm just amazed it's still there. But it was, it had to get to know the student, the student's way of speaking, that kind of thing. Now, I tried to use it again maybe about 15 years ago, and found it was a little bit better, but not. And so only one student could use that one laptop because it had. Is that still the case?
That's still the case,
okay.
yeah.
And they do need to speak clearly, so if they have a speech impediment as well.
Yeah, well, it's not that they have to speak clearly, but they have to give it a lot of input. So it's not comparing it to the Microsofts, the Googles, the Siris of the world. It's not getting as much data. It's not pulling as much sort of from the cloud, as it were. So it takes longer, but the outcome is much better. So for us personally at our school, it's been difficult getting this into students to use it enough, because you probably need about a month of input to really get it happening. But usually the students that have dyslexia or language difficulties hate school or dislike school or whatever, so there's a whole bunch of other factors to consider. We've had 2 students in particular, twins, who both use it really actively, and they're sort of your high achieving type of students, but with a language disorder. So that's where we've found the best success. But this is the best that we have. I mean, I think the little short things we've just done show you enough that you can sort of think, if that was you and you were relying on that, there's sort of massive gaps in it.
Okay.
Now, Kolber Read is for anything, so PC, Mac, whatever.
Oh, really?
There's versions for all of those, which is why we use it.
Use the iPhone before.
I was trying to get you to see that when you use a store off-the-shelf product, it's not quite what you're looking for yet.
Okay.
It might be later.
But I couldn't have got it on my phone.
What do you mean you couldn't have got it on your phone?
Well, you said has everyone got an iPhone?
What phone do you have?
I have an Android. I have a Huawei.
Look it up, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you said an iPhone, who doesn't have an iPhone? I just assumed you meant that you can only run on
I was speaking.
iPod.
I was using a brand when I shouldn't have, probably. Who has a computer? A computer telephone.
She's got her own phone, what she's using mine. Like the kids in the classroom.
All right, this will be the last one, and then I'll get you to actually do this for a video of your own. So, basically the message of this is, if it's store-bought, if it happens automatically, it's not good enough currently. So if it's happening automatically, it's not quite there. So what we'll do in a second is we'll actually caption one of either my YouTube videos or yours if you've got one, whatever you've got. We'll pick a video and we'll caption it just to see just how incorrect it is. So we'll get it to do it automatically, and then we'll do what subtitlers, captioners do and actually fix it back up, which is what John was talking about when he came in. So that's what he does. That's what academics typically do. You get it transcribed automatically, then you send it to a person who fixes it by listening to it, which doesn't sound that much quicker, but anyway.
Yeah.
Captions and subtitles are different. So a caption is for people that can't hear. So that you're thinking of your closed captions when it says, ACDC's Long Way to the Top plays, those sort of things. That's captioning. Subtitling is just your typical SBS yellow text. It's presuming you don't know the language rather than the fact that you can't hear.
When we put subtitles on Netflix, we get, soft music playing in the background,
Captioning. Is that captioning?
So that's captioning, yeah.
Even though it says on the thing, like it says, subtitles.
Yeah.
Because they have made the distinction.
Yeah. Like even when I was doing this, I was like, oh, they're different things. Because you go onto YouTube and it says subtitle a video with captions, and it's just something that you throw around.
Okay.
But they're actually distinct things, so hence we are here. So there's two versions of YouTube, and this is the sort of time investment you're looking at personally. So the top one was just a promo for this. It was 1 minute and 4 seconds, and it took me 6 minutes and 46 minutes to caption it. So that's almost six times as long.
Yeah.
The second one, 1 minute and 12, took me 5 minutes and 41 seconds. So you can see why there's companies for this, because that's a massive investment of actual time and also money, I guess. This is probably going to start clicking. One thing you can do if you have Dragon Speak and you've trained it, you can get it to actually caption your video, so it's learning from you and the things you say and all those sort of things. But that's a bit costly and expensive.
Oh,
And then,
I won't copy that sentence.
well, I mean, you can. Like, if this was something you were doing full time, it would save you a lot of time and money, but it's a lot of time, and we're teachers, so we don't have a lot of time, in short. And I think we've done it. So ASD is my course. Sipan Readers, I don't recommend. Live captioning, we tried that. Teacher productivity, we talked about that. Accessibility, we did. Captioning and subtitling, we talked about. Assistive Technologies. Record your iPhone screen, doesn't interest you. And then, so to me, the one message of this is, would you use it? And which of these things would you actually use if you had to rely on them? So that is an actual question. What do you think?
It's really hard when you don't know what the user experience is. And I think, if I was working in this space, I'd be talking to the user, like showing them lots of different things, getting them to critique it, because I can't, I'm not going to bring that experience to them.
Definitely. I think of the Sipan readers, like if I handed you one, within 10 seconds, you'd be able to say, this isn't cutting it, this doesn't cover it. But once you get beyond that to a certain level, like the difference between Microsoft doing it automatically and Dragon Speak learning, you'd have to put a student in front of it, like we have done, and it sounds like you've done as well, and see how long it actually takes them to learn it. And then that would decide whether it's worth doing or not for those students in that context, in that setting, yada, yada, yada.
And if they're not like those twins that you had who are highly motivated and want to succeed, and if they get discouraged very quickly.
And then thinking about the teachers who have to work with those students, who have to do all of the modifications and the time they have to do it.
And the number of teachers that have to repeat that process.
So in a lot of what I try and do is you try and upskill the teachers rather than replace them with a tool. But having said that, you might look to use these sort of tools in the interim between, say, like most schools spend a small fortune on teachers' aides, which the research I've read at least, tells us aren't that effective at changing student outcomes. So you might, as a school or as a department or as a system, look to decrease the amount of teachers' aides you have and instead spend the money upskilling the teachers. But in the interim, using this as sort of a bridge. I don't know.
And I mean, wouldn't it be an ideal situation to also get to the stage where it's the student who is autonomous in this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so a lot of the things I've shown you, even if they're not perfect, you would rather a student using an imperfect tool independently than you giving them the perfect tool and forcing them and so on.
And wouldn't it be interesting to see how they navigate this world outside school? Because they're probably more motivated in some ways.
Yeah.
When you were talking before about that the student or the child on the gaming, they'd obviously worked out a way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of like, if this sort of technology, if you show it to a student, they think, why would I do that? Because it's school. If you said you can use the same thing to send text to your girlfriend and it won't make you sound like you have dyslexia or a language disorder, you'll just sound pretty slick with the girls or the boys or whatever, then obviously the motivation starts to come in a little bit stronger than just you can type your essays by talking or whatever. In closing, most of this will, I hope, be redundant in 5, 10, 15 years as the software gets a lot better and gets more data from actually disabled students. But in the interim, these are all kind of partial solutions to a bigger problem. But I think it's interesting to talk about. The end. Cheers.
Thank you. You know, we've had another kind of category added in South Australia. It used to be there many years ago, and they took it away and they put it back again, which is behavioural.
All right. That's a very political choice, yeah.
Exactly. The whole, I know, floodgates. So, you know, the whole emotional, that, you know, trauma, that kind of...
Is it a particular type of categories of behaviour? Is it things like oppositional defiance and those sort of things?
No,
or is it quite broad?
it's really, I cannot believe it. I don't know where they're going to get the money from. Because that was there a long time ago, you know, and then they cut it out because there was too many kids in that category.
Because you'd put everyone in there and get funding and...
And they kept raising, as we know, like the bar for intellectual disability.
Yeah.
And so that's going up all the time. Dyslexia has never been in there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And yet suddenly in comes this, something in a school, like, well, most schools really, but like a school like ours, man, suddenly we've got this, as many SWDs we have now, we have this other group who, you know, are joining.
So what
them.
SWD?
Students with disabilities. We have them now from this, you know, emotional, and so they can...
Is it tied to funding? Like if I said all of Year 9 was a behavioural tag, do we then get more money, or like how does that work?
Very interesting. So we kind of don't know, like it just sort of happened, like this came and we were told, no, that's how it is now. And I think, do I check this out and see if I do? Or, well, you said, no, because it's the same person I checked them out earlier on something else here. Then the department kind of came in saying, oh, what's going on here? So, yeah, and I don't know. I think it must be funding. Has to be.
If I was you, or if I knew the person who was drawing the money, I'd be saying, seems like a behaviour concern, as often as I could until you were the best funded school in the state.
Well.
What's the criteria? What's the hoops you have to jump through to?
We're kind of not, you know, told that. The people who have told us and said, oh, they decide that. They are the ones who decide. So we've got kids who don't attend. We've got kids who have anxiety issues, so might then lead to not attending or leaving the classroom, or cut away, that sort of thing. We've got students who basically don't behave properly consistently. We've got a lot of them. Do you know what I mean? It made this category, and I just thought, it's just so many. I couldn't believe it. So yeah,
wow.
Interesting. Well, it's the repercussions of that too, because then we are told you have to give them a C grade. I said, no, if they haven't. Exactly.
Why do you have to give them a C grade?
Because they've got disability. No, we have to modify it in order for them to achieve.
You know.
I know. It's.
Who tells you they have to get a C grade?
These are people on the exec who are saying, and I said, no, I'm sure that's not right. So then I contacted the department and I said, this is what we're being told. And they said, yes, they are perfectly right.
Oh.
And then she
wow.
said, you can ring me if you want to. And that's why I rang, and I said, and she wasn't there, and I said, I would very much like to speak to you about this. And then next minute she was coming out to the school, and we were hearing something different, and that's when, and I actually, she did. She said it then, she said, oh, we've also now got another category for kids who are, if you tell me that they're not attending, so that's why they're performing better because they're not attending. Or they have behaviour issues, they added those in, and we said...
So there seems a bit of an indicator though, like they're looking at student performance indicator. So it's...
But they're still
so it
saying...
sounds like they're flagging, if students are not performing, they're looking at reasons.
But they're the people from the department saying, you will include... And then they gave us a new list, and those kids were on that new list. They're department people, they're the ones that give us the funding. So are they after more funding? Who knows?
Wow.
I know, and... I mean, it's terrible to say. I have a disabled child, but do you know what I mean? I kind of think this is dodgy.
Well, it's really wrong.
It is dodgy.
Yeah, I think it's wrong.
And it's putting resources, spreading them thin where they should be going to, where there's genuine.
Exactly.
And let's face it, behavioural
Inclusion.
might be addressed in so many other ways.
Exactly, but they're called different things in different schools. Not consistently not tucking your shirt in one school, Exactly, that's right. Whereas we kind of think, are they wearing shirts?